Stop. Stop scrolling. Stop whatever you were about to do in the next 10 seconds. Because the most polarizing woman in the world is unraveling in real time. And the one man who saw it coming years before anyone else, the one man who lost one of the biggest jobs in British broadcasting for daring to say it out loud, is watching it all unfold exactly the way he predicted. Piers Morgan, love him or hate him, has now been vindicated on so many of his 5-year-old claims about the Duchess of Sussex that even his loudest critics on this story are quietly going silent. Today, we are walking through 10 very specific claims Piers Morgan has been making in print and on air for 5 straight years. The claims that cost him his career on British morning television. The claims the wider press treated as fringe. The claims that are now, one by one, being confirmed in the most spectacular, most public, most irreversible fashion you can possibly imagine. Stay with me all the way to number 1, because that one is the claim that may, in the end, define this entire post-royal era. Tonight, we are counting down from 10 to 1, the contradiction Meghan Markle cannot explain, the crown she keeps reaching for after walking away from it, the Serena Williams unboxing that turned into the public relations equivalent of a car crash, the Ukraine speech that landed at the worst possible diplomatic moment, the very pointed public silence about Prince Harry on the biggest stage of the King's reign so far, the friendship playbook that keeps cutting people out, the visa file that may, in time, prove to be the most serious legal challenge in this entire story, the financial reckoning that one source has now put on a 5-year timeline, the bullying inquiry that never went away, and the one claim Piers Morgan made in 2021 that ended his career on British morning television. That the wider world has now, in slow motion, come around to as well. So get comfortable. Pour yourself something strong, because this is the run of vindications all arriving in the same extraordinary week. Truth number 10, the contradiction Meghan Markle cannot explain. We start here because this is the moment everything cracked open in plain sight, and millions of people saw it happen in real time. Weeks ago, Meghan Markle sat down for a long, soft, carefully styled video conversation with her close friend Jamie Kern-Lima. 2 rocking chairs, no visible makeup, warm lighting, the whole setup designed to communicate, this is the real me. This is the unfiltered version. This is the truth. In that conversation, Meghan Markle looked directly into the camera and told the world she was living the happiest, most fulfilled life she had ever known. Those were her words. She talked about her beautiful children. She talked about her thriving marriage. She talked about her incredible life in California. She compared Prince Harry to a video game hero, her protector, her champion, her everything. Make a mental note of all of that, because the timeline matters enormously to what happened next. Then, weeks later, in late April, Meghan Markle posted something to her 4.5 million followers that sent the entire internet into a tailspin. She shared a quote about ending the hardest 7 years of your life. She shared it twice on the same day. Piers Morgan, by his own published commentary, reacted within hours. And the first thing he did was the most basic piece of journalistic arithmetic: count backward. 7 years from April 2025 lands you squarely in 2018, her wedding year. The year she married Prince Harry. The year she became part of the most famous family on the planet. Coincidence? Piers Morgan does not believe in coincidence when it comes to Meghan Markle. He never has. He has said repeatedly, and with absolute conviction, that her public narrative constantly contradicts itself. With conviction that this woman speaks in layers. Everything is deniable. Everything is pointed. Nothing is accidental. So here is the basic question: how do you go from the happiest life you have ever known to the hardest 7 years of your life in the space of 3 weeks? Which version of Meghan Markle is the audience supposed to believe? Because both statements cannot be true simultaneously. They cannot even sit in the same sentence without one of them looking like a performance. This is where Piers Morgan has always started, not with accusations, not with personal attacks, but with the most basic journalistic question in the entire book: do the facts line up? And the answer, again and again, is no. Truth number 9, the Queen who never was. Here is something Piers Morgan has hammered on for 5 years that somehow keeps getting overlooked every single time a new controversy erupts. Meghan Markle is not a queen. She walked away from the royal family in January 2020. She and Prince Harry made that choice publicly, dramatically, and irreversibly. They left the institution. They rejected the duties. They stepped back from their formal roles. And yet, year after year, she has surrounded herself with people who treat her as if she still occupies that station. Astrologers in her orbit posting about her reigning again, capital R, capital Q, Queen. Influencers around her elevating the imagery of monarchy were never possible. The wider Sussex content machine quietly building a halo of royal language and royal aesthetics around a woman who formally surrendered the royal role. Piers Morgan has called out the moment she referred to herself as a princess on a podcast while speaking with little girls, calling it one of the most revealing things she has ever done. She is not a princess. She knows she is not a princess. But she said it anyway because the brand requires it. The commercial value depends on it. The audience these lifestyle products are pitched at is reached most effectively by leaning into the imagery she technically walked away from. And here is the central argument Piers Morgan has never abandoned, and that the wider royal commentary world has slowly come around to. You cannot hold the crown and the victim's story at the same time. You cannot walk away from an institution, publicly attack it, profit from attacking it, and then trade on its imagery to sell candles and jam. You pick a lane. Meghan Markle has spent 7 years refusing to pick a lane, and the public, on both sides of the Atlantic, has grown extraordinarily tired of watching her try to occupy both lanes at once. The polling data confirms it. The engagement metrics on her lifestyle content confirm it. The deafening A-list silence around her recent wedding anniversary confirms it. The audience has noticed, and the audience has begun, very politely, to stop pretending it has not noticed. Truth number 8. The Serena Williams disaster nobody saw coming. You need to understand the full picture here because the surface story is embarrassing enough, but what is sitting underneath it is genuinely damning for the entire commercial operation. Meghan Markle launched her latest As Ever collection, which, according to the published product listings, included a $64 candle and gourmet chocolates priced at $42 per package, presented in a powder blue box. A lifestyle brand positioning itself as aspirational luxury for the discerning modern woman. The team did exactly what any lifestyle brand would do at launch. They sent a public relations package to Meghan Markle's most famous, most loyal celebrity ally in the world, Serena Williams. Now, when your best friend and most high-profile celebrity supporter receives your luxury product launch package, there is usually one expectation: the public reaction should help the brand, not damage it. When your best friend and most high-profile supporter agrees to film an unboxing video for millions of followers, that is supposed to be the easiest piece of organic promotion you can possibly engineer. It is supposed to be the moment the lifestyle empire announces itself to the world. What actually happened, by every available frame of the video that ended up online, was something else entirely. Serena Williams opened the box. The chocolates, by visible inspection on camera, arrived smashed, broken, and stuck together. She looked at them on camera, and the expression on her face said everything her words were carefully trying not to say. Then, and this is the detail that turned the whole thing into a viral moment, Serena Williams admitted on camera that she does not even particularly like chocolate. She tried one anyway. She said they were beautiful while visibly struggling. Then came the candles. The candles that, by Meghan Markle's own marketing language, were inspired by her children's birthdays. Serena Williams attempted to read the scent notes aloud. She could not pronounce them. Multiple ingredients. She ended the video with, "Looks good. I love you, Meghan." The video went viral within the hour. Piers Morgan's verdict was immediate and unsparing: when your closest, most famous ally in the world cannot pronounce your product while actively trying to sell it for you, that is not a bad public relations day. That is the end of a brand. And the facts sitting behind that single viral moment only make the picture worse. On Meghan Markle's luxury clothing resale platform, reports published across multiple outlets claimed that, at the time of the most recent disclosure, she had sold only a single-digit number of items. Some customers, according to reports circulating on consumer review platforms, received candles with no wicks inside. A wickless candle sold as a candle is the kind of detail that sits in your inbox for months. The original jam launch, the grand debut of the entire lifestyle empire, saw labels printed crooked, packaging criticized online, and social media engagement collapse almost as quickly as the hype arrived. The labels were reportedly peeling off jars before they even reached the people who bought them. Step back from the individual product complaints for a moment and look at the wider picture. This is a woman who, according to widely reported terms, held a Netflix arrangement valued in the region of $100 million in its original framing, and a Spotify arrangement in the region of $20 million before that deal ended. For a solid window of 3 years, she was one of the most recognizable names on the planet. And the commercial reality she has built from all of that is broken chocolates, wickless candles, peeling labels, and single-digit clothing sales. Nobody, in the cold language of the marketplace, is buying it. Literally. Truth number 7. The Ukraine speech that crossed an uncrossable line. This one is different from the others. This one is not about branding, contradictions, or viral disasters. This one is about power, who has it, who does not, and what happens when you use a title you abandon to wade into geopolitics on the world stage. Prince Harry traveled to Ukraine as a private citizen. No mandate from Britain, no official role, no authority from the palace, the government, or anyone else. He sat alongside heads of government and former prime ministers and gave a speech calling for American leadership on the conflict, a speech that publicly contradicted Donald Trump's stated position. Piers Morgan called it infantile. He called it immature. He called it irresponsible. And the response from the White House confirmed that the speech had landed exactly as badly as Piers Morgan had predicted. Donald Trump was asked about it publicly and responded with characteristic directness: Prince Harry does not speak for the United Kingdom. But here is where it gets genuinely serious. Because while Prince Harry was giving that speech in Ukraine, telling the world that this was exactly what he was born to do, King Charles III was preparing for one of the most important diplomatic engagements of his entire reign, the recent United States state visit. The visit was a moment of global significance that required precision, careful diplomacy, and absolute political neutrality. Prince Harry's speech dropped only days before King Charles III stood at his own podium on American soil. The palace, by every available signal, was furious. The British government, by every available signal, was furious. And when you understand the context, a non-working royal, stripped of formal duties by his own choice, freelancing on geopolitics using the leverage of a title he walked away from, you begin to understand why the fury was not just political, but personal. Piers Morgan has said it as simply as anyone can. You cannot freelance on the back of a title you abandoned. You made the choice to leave. You made the choice to step back from royal duties. You do not get to invoke that identity when it is convenient for your global profile and discard it when it requires actual obligation. The palace saw it the same way. And what came next was the clearest signal yet that the relationship between Prince Harry and his family has crossed a threshold from which there may, by every available indication, be no return. Truth number 6. The public moment that spoke louder than any palace statement. Pay close attention here, because this is the kind of moment that passes in seconds but carries the weight of a verdict. During the King's recent United States state visit, in front of the President of the United States and a watching global audience, King Charles III spoke about American cities that carry the names of members of his family. He mentioned Charleston, named after King Charles II. He mentioned Williamsburg, named after King William. He did not mention Prince Harry. On one of the biggest stages of his reign, in one of the most carefully scripted moments of his public diplomacy, while listing the ways in which his family's history is woven into the fabric of America, the omission was impossible to miss. The king left his second son off the list entirely. Piers Morgan spotted it immediately. He called it deliberate, public, and unmistakable, not an oversight, not an editing decision, but a signal. A clear, cold, calculated signal delivered in the most public forum in the world to an audience of hundreds of millions, one that cannot be walked back or explained away. Now place that signal alongside what has already happened to the former Duke of York, formerly known as Prince Andrew. King Charles III has supported the formal removal of his brother's titles, patronages, and official connections, including his departure from royal residence. The institutional steps were carried through quietly. The institutional steps were carried through completely. And people close to the king are now telling royal commentators, Piers Morgan included, that the question being asked inside the palace is whether Prince Harry might face similar institutional consequences. The argument being made by Piers Morgan in his commentary is that the king may be wrestling with what those close to him have described as the nuclear option. Doing to Prince Harry what was done to Prince Andrew, removing Styles, ending official connections, and formally and permanently closing the institutional door. And here is the argument Piers Morgan makes that should genuinely concern Prince Harry's team. Prince Andrew disgraced himself privately and through his association with a convicted criminal. He never publicly attacked the institution. He never wrote a memoir dismantling the institution from the inside. He never gave a global broadcaster 2 hours of detailed personal commentary about the people he grew up with. He did not partner with a streaming platform on a documentary series. He did not spend 400 pages of his own published book describing the royal family as cold, cruel, and impossible to live alongside. Prince Harry has done every single one of those things. And if King Charles III has been willing to remove his brother for the reasons surrounding the Prince Andrew situation, the logical question Piers Morgan asks, very simply, is this: what prevents the same institutional response when the conduct in question is publicly attacking the institution itself? The question, in Piers Morgan's framing, is no longer whether the option is theoretically available. The question is whether, by the weight of the conduct itself, it is becoming inevitable. That is a reported framing, not a confirmed plan. But it is now sitting on the table in public in a way it has never sat before. Truth number 5, the friendship playbook. Let us talk about the people who have been cut out of Meghan Markle's life, not as gossip, but as a pattern. Because Piers Morgan has always argued that the most revealing thing about any public figure is not who they surround themselves with, but who they have systematically removed. And when you look at the list of people who have been close to Meghan Markle, truly close, not merely public relations adjacent, and then look at what happened to those relationships over time, the pattern becomes very difficult to ignore. Her entire family on her father's side, according to widely reported accounts, gone. Her father himself, a man whose conduct around staged paparazzi photographs was widely covered at the time, has, by every available indication, been entirely cut off since the wedding. Friends she described during her early royal years as lifelong advisors, who worked closely with her during the palace period, gone. Multiple staff members left under circumstances that generated a formal bullying inquiry from the institution itself. Former Communications Secretary Jason North, who served at Kensington Palace, put his concerns in writing in 2018, a black-and-white email to his superior describing what he characterized as a pattern of behavior toward staff. He used specific language about staff being bullied out of their positions and losing their confidence. Staff members were described as being systematically undermined. That is not an anonymous source. That is a named senior employee with a documented email trail. Piers Morgan has said this clearly and without hesitation, a woman who has removed virtually everyone who ever challenged her, who has been publicly separated from her own family members one by one, and around whom a formal workplace investigation at Kensington Palace was opened, is not, in his framing, in any position to be launching content about the art of friendship and human connection. Meghan Markle recently launched content positioning herself as an authority on friendship. Piers Morgan's response to that framing was immediate and characteristically blunt. As one of the many people he says he watched her cut off the moment her circumstances changed, he does not believe she is in any position to lecture anyone about how to be a good friend. The audience, by every available signal, has started to agree. It is also worth noting the wider pattern of departures from the immediate Sussex orbit since the original royal exit, because that pattern is a story in itself. A long list of senior communications professionals have cycled through the operation. Catherine Estileron, the first chief of staff in the United States, departed within roughly a year. Sarah Latham, recruited from a senior Democratic Party background, came in and later moved on. Several other credentialed press operatives brought in to bring order to the brand have followed similar arcs. The pattern, by Piers Morgan's framing and by reporting in serious royal commentary, is consistent. Professionals arrive expecting to bring discipline. The discipline runs into the operating mode. The professionals depart, the chair empties, the next candidate is recruited, and the cycle begins again. That is not normal organizational turnover. That is not an accident of the labor market. That is what the published reporting describes as a structural feature of how the operation is run. Truth number 4, the visa file. This is the one Piers Morgan has more than once called the quiet danger, the one not generating the loudest headlines right now, but the one that carries, in his published commentary, the most genuinely serious long-term consequences of anything in this entire story. Here are the facts on the record. The Heritage Foundation, a long-established conservative policy organization based in Washington, filed a Freedom of Information Act request seeking access to Prince Harry's United States immigration records. The basis for the request was straightforward. In his memoir, Spare, published in 2023, Prince Harry openly acknowledged past use of several controlled substances, including cocaine, cannabis, and psychedelic mushrooms. Past drug use is a question routinely asked on United States visa applications. Failing to disclose it on a visa application is not, in the cold language of the law, a technicality. It is grounds for adverse immigration consequences. The Heritage Foundation argued in court that the public had a legitimate interest in knowing whether Prince Harry properly disclosed that history and whether he received any form of favorable treatment. In September 2024, United States District Judge Carl Nichols ruled in favor of the Department of Homeland Security, finding that the Duke's privacy interests outweighed the public interest in disclosure. At the time, that looked like the end of the story. It was not. In March 2025, the same judge reversed course. Judge Carl Nichols ordered the Department of Homeland Security to publicly file redacted versions of the documents it had previously submitted privately to the court. The order required the documents to be released by the end of the day on March 18, 2025. They were duly released, more than 80 pages in total. More than 80 pages of court filings and transcripts were made public through the released versions. Large sections were covered in black redactions. According to independent reporting by Reuters, Associated Press, CNN, and multiple British outlets, the released documents did not include Prince Harry's actual visa application form. Instead, they contained court filings, government declarations, and supporting affidavits describing why the agency believed full disclosure could expose the Duke to harm in the form of harassment and unwanted media attention. The government argued in published filings that there was no evidence Prince Harry had received special treatment during his visa process. The Heritage Foundation, according to published reporting, was not satisfied with that finding, and the wider case remained, by every available indication, ongoing. And here is the line from open court that Piers Morgan has cited repeatedly. The Heritage Foundation attorney, while arguing the case publicly, stated that if a visa applicant lied on their immigration form, that, in the attorney's words, gets you deported. That is a real on-the-record statement made by a named attorney in a federal courtroom. People are, through routine federal immigration enforcement practices, deported for material misrepresentations on visa applications. These are not theoretical consequences. They are applied regularly to applicants with far less public profiles than the Duke of Sussex. It is also worth being honest about what the released documents do and do not establish, because precision matters. The released documents do not contain Prince Harry's actual visa application. They contain court filings, government declarations explaining why disclosure was opposed, and supporting affidavits from federal officials. The published Department of Homeland Security position in those filings is that the agency found no evidence that Prince Harry received favorable treatment during the immigration process. The government's published finding was that there was no evidence Prince Harry received favorable treatment during his visa process, and that should be reported as such. What the released documents do not do, however, is end the underlying question. The redactions are extensive. The Heritage Foundation has, by every published indication, continued pressing the wider case, and the public still has no direct line of sight into what Prince Harry actually wrote on his visa application regarding prior drug use. That gap is what keeps the case alive in published commentary. The wider political environment surrounding this also matters. The Department of Homeland Security fought disclosure for 2 full years. The administration in office at the time of the latest filings has, by every available signal in published commentary, shown little particular goodwill toward the Sussex household. Piers Morgan, in his published commentary across multiple platforms, has said the case is far from finished. In his understatement, he noted that there may be trouble ahead. He is not overstating the point. This is an active federal court case involving named parties, a named attorney, a named judge, and documented public admissions contained within Prince Harry's own published words. The clock on this is still running. By the reporting available, the next chapter of this story will be written in court filings, not tabloids. Truth number 3, the financial reckoning approaching at speed. Piers Morgan has always argued that, in the end, the money would be the truth that mattered most, not the titles, not the interviews, not the dramas, but the money. This week, according to published reporting, that picture has come into sharper focus than at any point since the original royal departure. Financial commentators close to this story are now giving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, according to widely cited reporting, a runway of roughly 5 years before they face what one source has described as a serious financial reckoning. The reporting describes it as a lifestyle adjustment they cannot simply brand their way out of. That is the reporting, not my prediction. The reporting cites Princess Diana's inheritance, which Prince Harry received in part as a younger man, as being significantly drawn down. The inheritance from the Queen Mother, which Prince Harry reportedly received on a later milestone birthday, is also, according to these accounts, being used to support their current lifestyle. Now consider what they are actually living on. The headline Netflix arrangement has, according to published reporting, ended in its original form. Spotify is done. The as-ever lifestyle brand is, by every available metric, not performing anywhere near the level required to sustain the present operation. The Invictus Games Foundation is a charitable institution, not a personal revenue stream. The Archewell Foundation reportedly closed at the end of 2025. And here is the detail that has become a quiet punchline among people living in and around Montecito, one of the wealthiest postcodes in America. When you buy a house in that community at the reportedly paid price, the next thing you usually do is renovate it. That is not considered a luxury there. It is simply what people in that neighborhood do. You bring the house up to the standard the community expects. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, according to widely cited reporting from sources Tom Sykes has spoken to and published, reportedly moved into their property largely as they found it, a house last substantially updated during a previous renovation cycle by a former owner more than a decade earlier. In Montecito terms, that is viewed as a financial signal. The neighbors can read it. And people living around them are now, according to Tom Sykes' reporting, openly describing the Sussexes in language that reflects exactly the kind of signal the unremodeled house is sending. 5 years of reserves before a lifestyle change becomes unavoidable, that is the estimate. And none of the current revenue streams appear to be performing at the level required to extend that timeline significantly. Piers Morgan has said for years that when the money begins to run out, the real story begins. And the real story, by every available indication, is beginning to be written now. Truth number 2, the bullying files and the institution that did not let it slide. Let us not allow this one to get buried beneath the lifestyle brand coverage, because it is arguably the most institutionally serious allegation ever attached to Meghan Markle's name, and it has never been fully and publicly resolved. In 2021, Kensington Palace announced it was opening a formal investigation into bullying allegations made against the Duchess of Sussex by multiple members of staff. This was not a tabloid story. This was the palace itself, an institution that traditionally goes to extraordinary lengths to avoid public conflict, formally announcing that it had received enough credible information to warrant an inquiry. The timing of that announcement was notable. It came days before the broadcast of the Oprah with Meghan and Harry interview with Oprah Winfrey. The palace made clear that staff members had come forward, that documented communications existed, and that the matter would be investigated. The investigation's findings were never publicly released. The palace decided the conclusions would remain confidential. The Sussex side, through public statements, characterized the announcement as a coordinated effort to damage Meghan Markle's image ahead of the Oprah Winfrey broadcast. That has remained the published Sussex position ever since. But the underlying email trail did not, by any available indication, disappear. Jason North, Communications Secretary at Kensington Palace during the relevant period, did put his concerns in writing in 2018. His emails exist in the public record. And his language, according to reports across multiple outlets, was specific, measured, and professional. He described what he believed was a pattern of behavior toward staff. He described behavior that had, in his characterization, caused serious harm to people working in close proximity to the Duchess. 2 staff members were specifically described in wider reporting as having been bullied out of their roles. That is named, documented, on-the-record reporting, not an unsourced rumor. Piers Morgan has returned to this point many times for a simple reason. An institution that protects the monarchy above almost all else decided in 2021 that the allegations were serious enough to announce publicly. That is the opposite of nothing. And when you place that formal inquiry alongside the trail of cut-off friends, separated family members, and departed advisors, a pattern that predates the royal years and continues through them, you are no longer looking at a series of unfortunate coincidences. You are looking at a consistent documented record, one that Piers Morgan has been citing, sourcing, and standing behind for half a decade. Truth number 1. The claim that cost him his career. Number 1. The claim Piers Morgan made the morning after Meghan Markle first sat down with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021. The claim he stated so plainly, so directly, and so completely without hesitation that it cost him one of the biggest jobs in British morning television. The claim that, according to Ofcom figures, generated roughly 40,000 formal complaints to the regulator. The claim that, according to published reports at the time, the Duchess of Sussex herself personally complained about directly to the broadcaster. The claim Piers Morgan refused to retract despite losing his livelihood over it. He said, "I do not believe her." Not, "I disagree with her characterization." Not, "I think certain details require clarification." He said, in the on-air language he used, that he would not believe her if she read him a weather report. That phrasing entered the popular vocabulary of British television almost instantly. Within 24 hours, Piers Morgan had walked off the Good Morning Britain set. Within 2 days, he had departed the program entirely. According to figures published at the time, the number of formal complaints filed to Ofcom about that single broadcast was around 40,000. One of the highest complaint totals in the regulator's recent history. Meghan Markle, according to published reporting at the time, was understood to have personally complained to the broadcaster herself. That was 2021. Now look at this single week alone. She told the world she was the happiest she had ever been. Then she shared content suggesting these had been the hardest 7 years of her life. In earlier public commentary, she told audiences of schoolchildren that she had been the most trolled person in the world for a period of consecutive years. Through her circle, content about reigning again has been allowed to circulate around her image. And across the Oprah Winfrey interview, the Netflix series, and the 400 pages of Spare, she and Prince Harry made the public case that the family they married into was cold, cruel, and impossible. Ask yourself the question Piers Morgan has always asked. How many of those statements can simultaneously be true? Not whether they sound compelling. Not whether they are emotionally delivered. But whether they are actually true in the ordinary everyday sense that a single life can contain all of them at once. The moment you place them side by side, they begin to collapse against one another. Piers Morgan has always argued that the core problem is not that Meghan Markle lies in obvious, easily provable ways. The core problem, in his framing, is that she has never decided who she actually is. Victim or victor. Duchess or celebrity. Devoted private mother or global commercial brand. The happiest she has ever been or barely surviving the hardest years of her life. The institution's greatest modern asset or its most damaged survivor. According to Piers Morgan's published analysis, she keeps trying to be all of those things at the same time. Reaching for whichever identity serves the moment she is currently in. And what this week has confirmed, beyond the broken chocolates, the viral unboxing, the Instagram reposts, the Ukraine speech, the financial reporting, and the federal court case, is that the audience has finally stopped being willing to follow Meghan Markle through the contradictions. Piers Morgan paid an enormous professional price for saying, 5 years ago, what much of the public commentary is now openly saying for itself. He did not wait for consensus. He stated his position. He defended it under extraordinary pressure. He walked away from a job most people would have protected at any cost rather than surrender what he believed was his right to say it. And he has, by every reasonable measure of what he originally claimed and what has happened since, been vindicated on the central point. So here is where we land. 10 claims, 5 years in the making, all colliding within the same extraordinary week. A happiness statement and a hardest 7 years statement made 3 weeks apart. A queen-like aesthetic kept alive by an inner circle even after the formal royal departure. A Serena Williams unboxing that turned into a market verdict. A Ukraine speech delivered days before one of the most important diplomatic engagements of King Charles III's reign. A pointed omission of Prince Harry's name at the exact moment when omitting it carried maximum symbolic weight. A documented pattern of cut-off relationships running from before the royal years through them and now beyond them. An active federal court case involving named parties, a named judge, and a real legal exposure that has not gone away. A reported financial runway with a visible 5-year deadline approaching fast. A formal palace bullying inquiry that has never been fully or publicly resolved. And a 5-year-old claim that cost a British morning television star his career. You cannot manufacture credibility by launching a new product line. You cannot rebuild trust through a rocking chair interview with a friend. You cannot publicly attack an institution, then attempt to reclaim it, sell its imagery on a candle, and still expect the audience to applaud the consistency of the project. And you cannot, by every available signal from the celebrity friends who once stood beside you at the altar, retain the public endorsement of a circle that has, very politely, moved on. Not everything in this story is finished. The visa case is still live. The question of titles inside the palace remains, by every available indication, unresolved. The financial runway is narrowing, but it has not yet closed. There is still time for decisions, for course corrections, for either Prince Harry or Meghan Markle to choose a meaningfully different path. But what cannot be undone is the credibility that has, over the past several years, steadily drained out of the operation in front of a watching global audience. Piers Morgan was right. He said so. He paid for saying so. And the wider world of public commentary is now, by every honest reading, catching up to him. The broader takeaway extends beyond the 10 individual claims. It is the pattern itself. None of these vindications arrived through tabloid speculation. Every single one emerged through documented reporting, named sources, federal court filings, official palace announcements, or Meghan Markle's own published words placed beside her other published words and refusing to reconcile. That is the standard Piers Morgan set for himself 5 years ago. And that is the standard much of the wider commentary world has now adopted in his wake. Stay sharp. Stay watching. Because the story that began at a royal wedding 7 years ago is not over. By every honest reading, it may only now be entering the chapter that many people saw coming for a very, very long time. I will see you very soon.